Hey everybody, it's Aldo Gandhi, and I just want to let you know really quickly that our swag shop is reopened. DeepDishTees.com is where you go, and that's tees with T-E-E-S. Clever name, guys. They're the new home of our merchandise. You can get t-shirts, you can get caps, you can get coffee mugs, you can get hoodies, you can get all sorts of good stuff, and you'll help out the bar room with the purchase. So head over to DeepDishTees.com. If you're looking for Greg Gabriel Talks Football, you've come to the right place, because that gentleman there beside me is Greg Gabriel. I am Aldo Gandia. Thanks for being here. And a quick note, JJ Stankevitz was scheduled to be with us, but he had a family illness that he's attending to. Nothing serious. He's going to join us sometime in a week or so. So, Greg, how are you, my friend?
I'm good. How about you?
I am hopeful.
I'm getting better by the minute.
Greg, I got to tell you, of all the people I talk football with, the one guy that I climb up a mountain and then I see at the top of that mountain wearing some kind of Maharishi outfit is Greg Gabriel, and I come to you for inspiration and knowledge. So please tell me about Matt Eberflus, and is this a good hire or not?
Well, I'm going to back up a little bit on this because, go back to our conversation earlier this week. I guess that's the right way of putting it.
Okay.
When Morocco Brown was taken out of the picture, I thought that meant Eberflus might be too, because while it wasn't necessarily a package, you knew that there was a strong tie because the two had worked together for the last 4 years. And so then I thought, okay, it's Quinn or Caldwell. But what I didn't know and came to find out is that Ryan Poles was also high on Eberflus. So, and then, he interviewed all three, and you got your wish. He did it by himself.
Yay!
And as my wife would say when she's referring to my dog talks, My wife's the voice, but my dog talks.
That's awesome.
She said, I did it by my own self. So
that is great. So what are your thoughts on Matt Eberflus? Clearly, you know a lot about him because of your association with Chris Ballard at Indianapolis, and from your contacts around the league and so forth. What do you hear from him? I hear nothing but sterling reports that he's a great culture builder and very, very meticulous about how he goes about his work.
Very smart, very organized, great leader. And this is the two things that I think being a head coach are most important. Great leader and holds the players accountable. And he's a very good teacher. So, players, if you listened yesterday, it was Jeff Joniak interviewed Lee, his linebacker in Dallas, and Lee was like all positives on him. And then they talked to Marinelli, and I don't know if you heard that interview.
No, I missed that one.
Yeah, everybody talked to Marinelli. Joniak talked to him. He was on the score with Speaks and Parkins, and then Jarrett Payton had him on too. So now I'm guessing here, and I don't know betting odds how they work, but I don't know. I'd say he's an odds-on favorite to be here in another few days. If Bisaccia doesn't keep the Raiders job, and it looks like he's not going to.
Yeah, too bad.
And Rod will be available. Rod is the guy who basically taught this defense to Eberflus. They're close, and whether he'd be the coordinator, the defensive line coach, or assistant head coach, or whatever, he is. He's going to be spending time with the defensive line. And in all the years I've been in football, he is hands down the best defensive line coach I have ever seen. And his way, he's an ex-Marine, and he just, he's not a holler guy, get in your face guy. He's a teacher. And his belief is that all good coaches have to be teachers first, especially your position coaches. And that's how he brought up Eberflus. You got to, and if you look at Matt's background, he originally was a walk-on at Toledo. And then I heard somebody last night say, well, he wasn't really a walk-on. His mother worked at the school, so he was getting free tuition anyway, so they didn't have to give him a scholarship. And then they gave him one anyway. But, because he earned it out, he was a starter as a freshman. So he's, a very positive type guy. But like I said, the fact that he holds players accountable, that's important to me, because then they know they're not going to get away with anything. The inmates aren't going to rule the prison, so to speak. And Chris said very, very mature, articulates things very, very well, gets along with people, likable. Players like him, but at the same time, he knows how to drive them.
That is music to the ears of every Chicago Bears fan, given what we've seen with defensive backs not touching down receivers who have fallen to the ground and allowing them to get back up and get extra yardage, even a touchdown in one or a touchdown or two in some instances. So the fact that he has the respect of the players, but he makes them accountable, is music to the ears of all Bears fans. That's great. What are you hearing? Because this is the $1 million question. Who's going to be the offensive coordinator? Who is going to develop Justin Fields? What's this offense going to look like?
Well, there's two candidates right now, and back up a little bit. When a guy goes through an interview process to be a head coach, he has to present a short list of who he wants to be the OC, the offensive line coach, etc. And the most important hires he has to make are the two coordinator positions and the two line coaches. You get those right, you got a chance.
Yeah, right on.
So that being said, now I talked to one of the guys today at length, Pep Hamilton. David Kaplan says Pep's here right now. Pep told me he's interviewing tomorrow.
Wow.
So I don't know. I didn't ask him if he's in Houston, but we went over. He called me at 8:30 this morning, and first question out of his mouth was, "Greg, what do you think of Fields?"
I love it.
And so, we talked about that. We talked, and then went literally over because he's not real familiar with the Bears personnel. He was coaching the Houston Texans, and they didn't play each other, so there was no crossover. So I went over the personnel with him. Gave him what my opinion was anyway. And, he said he was going to watch tape the next few hours. Now, whether that meant he was going to watch tape for the next few hours over at Hallis Hall and then sit down and have his interview. Like I said, he didn't say he was in Houston. He just said the interview was tomorrow. So now I'll say this. Now, I've known Pep since when did he first come here? 06?
I'll double check that. That sounds right.
Okay, around that. He's not a good coach. He's a great coach. So I worked with him here, and then I was his director of player personnel when he was the head coach of the DC Defenders in the XFL.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason he went there was, and he left. He was the offensive coordinator at Michigan the 2 or 3 previous years, and he left that just to have that opportunity to run his own show. But you look at his resume of who he's developed, starting off with Andrew Luck.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, then, he had some good quarterback play at Michigan, and he didn't have very good quarterbacks to work with. But fast forward, last year, he's the quarterback coach for the Los Angeles Chargers, and they had some rookie by the name of Justin Herbert who lit it up.
Pretty good.
With Pep Hamilton. Then this year he gets like a real late round guy, Mills from Stanford.
Mm-hmm.
And Pep is partial to those Stanford guys because he coached at Stanford for a long time as the offensive coordinator.
And quarterbacks coach.
Yeah. And he did a remarkable job with that kid. And, I said before, teaching is important.
Mm-hmm.
He's not a good teacher. He's a great teacher.
Mm.
And he knows offensive football. His offense has evolved over the years. When he first came to, and part of this is because he was working with Andrew Luck, was that, he coached Luck at Stanford.
Mm-hmm.
And then he gets Luck right away with the Colts. And to keep that continuity going, he kept pretty much the same offense.
Mm-hmm.
But the offense has evolved quite a bit since then. And that original scheme, I remember we had a conversation once, and this goes back. In fact, he had just gotten a job in Cleveland, and he was driving back and forth between Cleveland and Indianapolis, where he was previously. And I was driving back from Eugene Parker's funeral, and Pep gave me a call, and we talked for probably an hour and a half. But he explained then that Stanford Colts scheme that he was using, and really for every play call, there's 2 plays. Okay, so whatever the terminology is, and the quarterback makes the determination at the line of scrimmage. One part of the play is a run, the other part of the play is a pass.
Mm-hmm.
And depending what the preset read is, the quarterback then goes one or the other.
Mm-hmm.
So there's some option involved. But that's evolved quite a bit, and he doesn't use as much as that. He's gotten into the RPO game, et cetera, because of the type of quarterbacks. You're getting a lot more athletic quarterbacks, and but he knows football. Great coach, and the skins are on the wall as far as his ability to develop quarterbacks.
I love that expression, skins are on the wall. Winston wants to know, what is Pep Hamilton like as a person?
Oh, he's superb. Like I say, I'll tell you a story. And I told the story when I was interviewing for the player personnel job in DC. And Pep already knew that he was going to hire me. I didn't know that he was going to hire me, but he needed me to sell the coaching staff.
Mm-hmm.
And, so I had to give my philosophy. But then I told a story. And, when Pep first came here, I couldn't stand the guy.
Really?
He came from San Francisco.
Uh-huh.
And, I just thought he was a little standoffish. And he came in kind of demanding.
Mm-hmm.
And, he wanted this done, want that done. And then he had his own views on the quarterbacks in the draft. And I'm like, hey, man, we got scouts that have been out all year doing this. You got to write some reports. And so, anyway, we didn't hit it off very good.
Huh?
So, after the draft, we decided to go out and play a game of golf and have been very close ever since.
Wow.
And I should say a round of golf. And, you know, you work things out. And since, I mean, we, right from that point on, we were in step. The rest of the time, he was here in Chicago. And that's why he brought me into DC.
That's awesome.
So you're not going to hear me say a negative thing about Pep Hamilton. And I would be thrilled if he's the OC here, because then I know Justin Fields is in good hands.
That is great to hear. Really great to hear. And PC wants to know, does Pep Hamilton have head coaching aspirations? So the big concern is that he comes in here for a year, the offense explodes, and then we lose him, which happens in the NFL all the time. But Pep wants to be a head coach again, right?
Damn right. That's everybody's goal. And he was, and he's been on lists. I got a call from a former GM. This is right after, so it was a year ago, after the XFL had folded. And it's a guy who's on one of these diversity committees, you know, wanting to know about Pep and what I thought, because he knew I worked with him in two different situations, and really is a name for potential head coach, and not just NFL, but head coach in college too. You know, Pep, the last three stops haven't been very long. The XFL, because of COVID, we'd still be going strong, and he'd still be there if it wasn't because of COVID. Then he goes out to the Chargers, and the head coach gets fired. So, you know, your longevity's out the window. And then he goes to the Texans. So now he's had other opportunities. He interviewed, but turned down an OC job. I don't want to say where, but I know why. I'll tell you off the air, but I'm not going to tell you on the air.
Okay.
I just don't want to say bad things about, you know, certain coaches.
Certainly. Yeah, you never know.
He had an opportunity to interview for the OC job in Carolina just in the past few weeks, turned that down because he looked at the Carolina job. He just said, I don't know if that's a good situation. That could be a one and done. And I'm sick of one and done. You know, he wants some stability. But that being said, he wants to be a head coach too. And obviously his work as an OC and developing Justin Fields, if he in fact gets this job, that would go a long way towards him being a strong head coach candidate in the future. But hey, that's if he is and he gets a job, that means Eberflus made the right pick.
Yeah, you're right.
And McVay has lost a bunch of coaches.
Yeah.
Nick Saban loses coaches every year. You know what he does? He finds another good one.
Yep. You teach those coaches well what your scheme is and how you want things done, and you know, if you got a good pupil, he will then become a good teacher. Ray Rojas wants to know: is there any substance to reports that he's read that Rod Marinelli is waiting to return back to the Bears? Is that even possible, given the how fractious the relationship was when he left?
Yeah, but that was with Phil Emery. That had to do with Phil Emery.
So nothing to do with McCaskey and Phillips. So
that was he. I'll tell you what happened. Phil had him interview Tressman and Arians, and give me your take. and Rod said it's Arians, hands down.
Right.
And when Phil took Tressman, there was no way.
It's so sad that we could have Bruce Arians here and really get to see Jay Cutler in his element, because that would have been the vertical offense of all vertical offenses in Chicago Bears history.
But, the question was, do I think Rod's going to be back? And the answer is yes. Do I know that for sure? No. I mean, Rod's my age. So, but his knowledge of football is rare. And like I said earlier, he's the best defensive line coach I've ever been around. He's a great coordinator. And he's the guy who taught Eberflus the defense. So why wouldn't a pupil hire his teacher? Now he's under contract to the Raiders. And so it really, he was asked that question by Spiegel and Parkins yesterday, and he got real vague. He goes, well, right now I'm under contract to the Raiders with my good buddy, Rick Bisaccia, and you got to see what happens there. Read between the lines is, unless Bisaccia stays the head coach, he's out of there and probably here. And then Bigsy wrote last night that Bisaccia, if he doesn't get the head coaching gig in Vegas, then he's the guy they want for special teams here.
This is really exciting times for Bears fans as they form a coaching staff that hopefully is going to add wins to the win column and not L's to the L column. A lot of people are talking about this young guy who is the 49ers offensive coordinator, Mike McDaniel. He looks like my barista. What do you know about this guy? He's supposed to be some wonderkin. Have you heard anything about him being potentially a candidate for offensive coordinator for the Bears? I know he's interviewing for head coaching jobs right now. You hear anything about him?
I know nothing about him. In all honesty, I don't know. And I don't follow the 49ers that much. I never heard of the guy until yesterday. And then I saw some interviews on YouTube, and he looks like the mad scientist. But he might be a very knowledgeable guy. I don't know. He's not the play caller. Shanahan is.
Right.
And I just got a problem with, you're going to hire a guy to be your play caller. And if he doesn't have experience being a play caller, then you don't know exactly what you're getting. Okay, Pep has been a play caller in the National Football League, been a play caller in college, and been successful at both. So he has that experience. The other candidate supposedly is Luke Getsy, the passing game coordinator in Green Bay. Whether there's another guy, I don't know. But, again, Getsy's not the play caller. LaFleur is. That's LaFleur's offense up there. So now that's Matt Nagy all over again. You got somebody coming down with using somebody else's offense, and he hasn't driven that offense. He's been the passenger. Well, if I'm going to buy a race car driver, I want a guy who's been behind the wheel.
Well, we'll see if McDaniel is first going to be offered a head coaching job, and if he's not, then we'll be paying attention to see if there's any interest for the Bears to lure him over. What would be not a lateral move, because he'd have the opportunity for the first time in his career to call plays, and so that would be big for his career.
Right, and right now you can't even hire the guy. Because San Francisco is still playing now, and if they win Sunday, then it's 2 more weeks before you can get him. How that job's going to be filled?
Yeah.
In fact, I'd like to see it filled today. or tomorrow, whatever day Pep is really.
One more question about Pep from someone in the chat room. What's his devotion to the run game?
He's equally devoted. I told him, I said he's going to have as good a pair of running backs as he's ever had.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, I think that's the real strong part. And I said, then you've got the hidden question of Tariq Cohen.
Mm-hmm.
And he knows all about Tariq Cohen. I said, but, can he play? It's been a year and a half removed. He didn't play this year. Said there was rumors of that he had a second surgery. I said, I don't know if that's true. You can find that out when you interview. But, he's a special player when he's healthy.
Mm-hmm.
But you got to find out if he's healthy first.
Exactly. That is key. Wishing Tariq the absolute very best. The Bears have a reported $42 million in salary cap space available, but they've only got like 34, 35 players under contract. So there's a lot of money available, but a lot of holes to fill. Do you think there is the possibility of a big free agent signing? That is, free agency is right around the corner. And so I'm sure one of the many things that the new general manager is involved with is trying to determine, where the money could go to maybe pick up a premier left tackle or a wide receiver who has some reputation to him.
I don't know if they could go after a left tackle because it just drafted 2 tackles.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And left tackles, unless you're getting a bargain like they did on Peters for $2 million,
mm-hmm.
cost a lot of money. And so now I think there's probably guys on this roster that aren't going to be on the roster. And once the coaching staff and the personnel department go through the tape and say, okay, this guy's a fit, this guy's not a fit, this guy isn't playing up. And I'll say this, and I don't want to sound confusing. I got one philosophy on contracts with players. And if a guy's making $5 million, he's got to give you $5 million back in production.
Yep.
Or you have to get rid of him. That and for that reason, as good as Akeem Hicks is, I don't think he'll be back unless he can come back at a bargain basement price. He's missed so much time the last 2 years, and he's getting up in age. And then you say, okay, where's he fit in this scheme? And we could talk about this scheme a little bit too, because I know that scheme like the back of my hand.
Mm-hmm.
Is he a perfect fit? Probably not. But you've got, when Lovey came here, we might have mentioned some of this before, but, we had Keith Traylor and Ted Washington inside, Philip Daniels and Alex Brown as the ends, and Greg Blasch's 4-3. One of those guys was a fit for Lovey's scheme, and that was Alex Brown.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, the other guys were fit because Greg Blasch played it was a 4-man front with 3-man front principles and a lot of 2-gapping, and you had those big trucks in the middle between Traylor and Washington that you weren't going to move off the line of scrimmage.
Mm-hmm.
But those type of players can't play in Lovey's scheme because it's a 1-gap penetrating scheme. So you go over the Bears defensive roster, and right off the bat, Khalil Mack and Quinn are listed as outside linebackers. Well, earlier in their career, they were listed as defensive ends.
That's right.
Because they're edge guys. Their job is rush the passer. And they are perfect fits for that scheme.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Eddie Goldman can still play the nose. The nose really doesn't play head up over the center in this scheme very much. He's sometimes lined up as a 1, which means he's in the gap between center and guard. Sometimes he's lined head up on a guard, but he is seldom right over the center. And then the 3 technique is often between the guard and the tackle or over the guard. But the most important guys, when Lovey came in, he said, I got to have 3 things. And Eberflus is just a little bit different. Got to have 3 technique. I got to have a will linebacker. And I got to have a safety.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, Mike Brown was the safety. Lance Briggs was the will linebacker. And then we didn't have the 3 technique. In that draft, we drafted Tommy Harris.
Oh, awesome.
Who was the 3. So, but that's what makes the defense go. Now, Eberflus, he said his 3 most important guys are the 3 technique, the will linebacker, and the slot corner.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
So, a little bit different there. And right now, I'm going to say Bears, a weak point there would be slot. Who's your slot corner going to be?
Mm-hmm.
So, that's an area of concern. I think Ball Nichols can play the 3 without a problem.
Mm-hmm.
He's athletic enough, quick enough, explosive enough. Eddie Goldman might want him to drop 10 pounds, but he can easily play. That's, Anthony Adams was that nose tackle.
Mm-hmm.
And Anthony wasn't very tall, but he had real long arms, very strong, very explosive, first step. He's going to have those. Now, it was what Lovey never had, and Tony Dungy never had,
mm-hmm.
when this defense developed, was a Mike linebacker like Brian Urlacher.
Right.
So that brought a new dynamic, to the whole scheme,
mm-hmm.
because now you had 2. You had a Will and a Mike. Now, Lovey, when he first got here, and I know I told the story on here a while ago,
mm-hmm.
he's in my office, and I have, Jerry didn't have the team on his board. I had it on mine because our offices were right across from each other.
Mm-hmm.
So I had like the depth chart up on the wall and had their college height, weight, combine height, weight, and speed, and all that. So he's looking the Will, and he sees Briggs. Now, he's never coached Briggs a day yet.
Mm-hmm.
And he sees 4.77, I think was his combine time or something. Man, I can't have that by Will. That's too slow. And Jerry and I are both like, no, Lovey, trust me. He plays 4.55.
Mm-hmm.
And, it didn't take Lovey long to figure out that we were right.
There you go.
So, and Marinelli was singing Briggs' praises too.
Mm-hmm.
So, saying that, okay, who's your Will here? Roquan Smith. So you've got and who was Eberflus's Will in Indy? Darius Leonard. Same draft.
Yep. Same draft, right? And, second rounder.
Yeah, you got to, that's a very, very important piece of the defense. So it's already here. You don't have to go get one. Okay, who's going to be the Mike? Well, my guesses would be Ogletree, because that Mike's got to do, he's got to cover the middle of the field in coverage.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of Ogletree's strong points is coverage. And he's not a bad player against the run either.
Right.
Brian Urlacher, but how many of those guys are there besides none? There's one. So I think the makings are there. You don't really care about who the Sam linebacker is because he's not going to be in there very much anyway.
Mm-hmm.
When you get into your sub defenses, that Sam linebacker's out and you're bringing in another defensive back.
Mm-hmm.
So and they, I think I said that there's a weakness at the slot corner. I think if he can get Eddie Jackson back to where he was, they're pretty strong. They're going to be strong through the middle, which is how I learned the defense originally, being strong through the middle.
Right. It's the way I've learned it too. You win at the trenches, and the trenches start in the middle.
Yeah, but I mean that particular scheme.
Gotcha.
You got to be strong through the middle, and there's always been variations of it. When Lovey first came, we were playing a lot of zone. That's where you get that Tampa too. You're playing, too deep zone. But we had some guys between Tillman and Nate Vasher that were excellent man-to-man cover guys. So then you start playing more man with it. And I know Eberflus played more man when he was down in Indy. And it's really determined by your personnel that you can make these adjustments.
Let's take a quick look at free agents at the middle linebacker position. I'll read out some names here and stop me if you want to comment on any of them. Dante Hightower, who is going to be 32 very soon, is probably the highest market value inside linebacker.
Well, you got to have a guy. You got to have a guy that can run. This defense is predicated on speed.
Okay.
So if they're not fast or play fast, because Lance didn't time fast, but he played real fast, then the guy isn't a fit for the scheme. And
right.
That's where Ogletree comes in. And I don't think Danny Trevathan is a real fit in the scheme.
No, he's not.
So I'd say chances are Danny Trevathan's not going to be a Chicago Bear next year.
Yeah. I mean, even based on his performance, unfortunately, the injuries just have kind of derailed his performance on the football field. So I think his days are over. Great player for a few years with the Chicago Bears, but time to move on.
In fairness, he came on, he played pretty good when he played this year. But, they played him more in a rotation. But Ogletree was clearly the better player. And, they went into the season thinking Trevathan was going to be the starter, and Ogletree flat beat him out in the preseason.
Yep.
If you go back to preseason, he jumped. He was one of the guys that really jumped out at John Tate.
Yep.
And when he was a rookie, in the first couple of years, when he was with the Rams, he was in the upper echelon of Mike linebackers in the league. And then, and I don't know why, somebody said bring John Bostic back. No. Ogletree was, his career went downhill. I have no idea why, but he resurrected it against the Bears.
Sure did.
Or with the Bears. So, going in, they're going to look at that tape last year and, they're going to say, yeah, he can play. I'm pretty convinced of that. So, but the real thing isn't the guys. They got the guys that they can play this defense without making a bunch of changes. Where when Lovey came in, we had to make a boatload of changes. I mean, we had to change the whole defensive line except for Alex.
Right.
We brought in Alawale Agunlie, drafted Tommy, drafted Tank Johnson, brought in Spice Adams. So totally different look across the line.
Larry Golden wants to know, would you give Kirksey a look at that middle linebacker position? Christian Kirksey, 29 years old, plays with the Texans, played 13 games this year, had 93 tackles, 2 quarterback hits, no sacks, 1 interception. What do you think about Christian Kirksey?
I don't, because I've never really studied him since he's been in the game. But he has been predominantly a 3-4. And unless he's got that speed and range, he's not going to be a fit for this scheme.
Anthony Walker.
You don't have to have big guys at the linebacker position. You got to have run and hit guys.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Anthony Walker, he wasn't at Anthony Walker was a Cleveland Brown. He wasn't with
no, he was at the Colts for a while.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. He might have been drafted by the Colts.
My bad. Excuse me. Regarding the defense, well, let me ask you this, because somebody mentioned that dropping Danny Trevathan is going to be a $3 million cap hit, and I think that's accurate. I almost feel like we have to have low expectations for the 2022 season, because if you're going to do a roster overhaul, it's going to mean signing 1-year bridge players so that then you can really, really attack the roster in 2023 when the cap amount of dollars is going to explode with the TV contract. For Bears fans to expect a dramatic roster upheaval with outstanding football players, particularly with the limited amount of draft picks, I think it's a fairy tale.
They don't have a first, but they have a high second.
Right.
The chances are now that brings up a point. This Ian Cunningham's coming in today too to interview for.
Oh yeah.
Sounds like the assistant GM position.
Interesting.
And I don't know him, but when you look at his resume, he was at Philly, and before he was at Philly, he was with the Ravens. And the Ravens, as far as I'm concerned, got the best scouting department in the league as far as developing scouts.
Mm-hmm.
They are outstanding, and that started with Ozzie Newsome. So, and this guy is they're not going to bring him in unless they want to hire him, and the Eagles gave permission. So, by the end of the day, or maybe tomorrow, he's going to be the assistant GM. Okay, now, what's that give you? Chicago Bears reports that you already have.
Mm-hmm.
Kansas City Chiefs reports on players. And the Philadelphia Eagles reports on players. So you've got really 3 teams in these guys' heads of, who likes who. That gives you a lot of ammo. I mean, as far as, or ammo's not the right word, a lot of knowledge.
Yeah.
And because now, you're getting, you got a perspective from 3 different clubs, and they might not be the same, which is, it's an imperfect science.
Mm-hmm.
But knowing what 3 teams think going into a draft is invaluable.
Mm-hmm.
So, but now, looking at the roster, and I don't know if we're getting ahead of ourselves in this thing, you got to get a couple receivers. Have to, because A-Rob's not going to be here unless something miraculous happens and he comes off his $20 million a year figure.
Mm-hmm.
You got to go out. You got to get a receiver to play across from Mooney.
Right.
Okay. Then you got, Damiere Byrd and Goodwin. Byrd actually, in my opinion, exceeded expectations. But is he a top 3? Not in my opinion.
Yeah.
He's a 4, and he can play special teams.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what Goodwin is. He's a 4. And so they got to go out and get 2 receivers.
Mm-hmm.
One's got to be a big guy. My opinion. I mean, because Mooney's not the biggest guy in the world. You got a lot of big receivers in the league. They can be matchup problems, and they don't have to be the speediest guys. A-Rob was a 4.55 guy,
mm-hmm.
Coming out of college. They got to know how to run routes. They got to have that extended catch radius. In other words, you don't catch in here, you can do this.
Right.
And make the back shoulder grabs and get the low grabs. Remember, I was doing Michael Irvin when he was at Miami coming out.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
He's going full speed across the field on a crossing route. and the ball came in low. So he had to go down. He must have caught that ball 6-8 inches off the ground, and he never broke stride.
Wow.
And just kept going. It was like, as soon as I saw that, I was like, holy shit. You know, because amazing. The flexibility involved.
Yeah.
And the body control involved.
Mm-hmm.
I'm amazed that I can even remember that. That was like 100 years ago. But
did you go to the strip bars with him afterwards?
No.
Sorry.
Who was the big nose tackle who played for New England?
Oh man, I remember his.
I know the picture of him was right in front of me.
My gosh, I'll never forget the image of his feet were sweating. Wilfork, thank you, MF. You win the award, Vince Wilfork.
Yeah, Vince Wilfork. Yeah. Okay, Vince was in he was in play because even at 340 pounds, he ran. I was at the Miami Pro Day. Now I had dinner with Vince the night before, and we thought he could play the 3. Now he got bigger when he was in New England, but he was about 315 or something at the Miami Pro Day, and ran like a 505. And for a big guy like that,
that's amazing.
But anyway, like a lot of these football factories, he didn't go to class. He used to go. He's telling me this the night before when we having dinner. He used to go fishing all the time. He had a buddy who had a boat, and they go out fishing. He asked me, he says, "Hey, you want to go fishing after the thing? You can come along, man."
Pretty cool.
That's what he liked to do.
Love it. Back to the offensive line for a second. Can you either signing a 1-year deal in case you are thinking about moving those 2 tackles that you drafted or one of those 2 tackles that you drafted inside because you feel a little bit more comfortable that Borum or Jenkins.
Even though this group has no affinity to those guys, they didn't draft them.
Right.
Still, they're quality football players.
Mm-hmm.
And Jenkins' tape really, if you look at it, it's not that bad, especially when you throw in the fact that he had no camp. And when he got thrown in, he had limited reps before that, physical reps because of the way practices are in the league once you get, through that halfway point.
Right.
So, he was learning on the fly. Now, I think from an athletic standpoint, he easily is capable of being a pretty good left tackle. He needs to play.
Yeah.
And the only change I would think, and I told this to Pep, my opinion, was that I'd put Daniels back at center and then have competition at right guard.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I said, might be Bars or, could be somebody they bring in free agency. But I think, when you're talking free agency and, you might be able to get a pretty good receiver where they're drafting. History says you will get a good receiver where they're drafting.
Mm-hmm.
But is he going to be ready to come in and, Mooney was a freak that they got him that late and he was that productive as a rookie.
Mm-hmm.
But I think, between the 2, you got to get at least 2 receivers.
Mm-hmm.
And you got to get some DBs and probably another interior lineman because you're going to lose Akeem Hicks.
Right.
And again, now is Akeem Hicks lost? Well, he's another guy. He wants big money.
Mm-hmm.
So you only got so many dollars to spend.
Right.
So you can't, if you can hit him on a 1-year deal for $5 million, sign him.
Yeah.
But are you even going to get $5 million out of it because of how much he's been hurt the last 2 years?
Exactly. That's the big question with him because when he played that late season game, what was it, against the Vikings? He just had such an extraordinary game. He was so hyped up. The defense looked so different with him on the field.
Yeah, but then he wasn't around after that.
Yeah, exactly. He missed the last 2 or 3 games of the season, and had missed a number of games prior to that. So,
something tells me there was something else going on.
Yeah, and he has promised to talk about that, so we can't wait to see him answer those questions, because he was asked, about what the Matt Nagy era. He goes, well, frankly, I'll answer those questions after the season's over. So we shall see what he's got to say. Clearly, a lot of players, not a lot, but a handful of players have shared stories to media members about some of the Matt Nagy blemishes, for lack of a better way of putting it.
Yeah, but was it Matt Nagy? Was it his position coach?
Mm-hmm.
Was it? And that's why, if you got like Marinelli coming in,
mm-hmm.
now you got one of the best D-line coaches of all time.
Yep.
If in fact he does come. And even if it's coordinator, he's an individual. If you listen to Rod yesterday,
mm-hmm.
he said that 20, 25 minutes of individual is the most important part of practice.
Interesting.
Because he says, and that's where you got to teach your players and hold them accountable.
There you go.
And so he's Eberflus got his philosophy from Rod, but your position coaches, your coordinators got to be X and O guys.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, your position coaches, they got to be teachers.
They have to be teachers. Absolutely. Yeah. That's their job. And so I want to, in these last few minutes that we have, I want to address some of the questions that were posed to you in the chat room. PZ had a thought. He says, aside from George Halas, the Bears have hired only 2 head coaches with prior head coaching experience. Is this a possible reason that they've had constant failure? Your thoughts?
If you look at the majority of head coach hirings in the National Football League, they're all first year, all first time head coaches. They're very seldom do we see retreads. Yeah, John Fox is one.
Mm-hmm.
Belichick went 5 years in between Cleveland and going to New England.
Right.
And Pete Carroll was one. But for the most part, it's new coaches. And now I don't know if that had anything to do with Quinn not getting the job.
Mm-hmm.
Some of these guys may be hot names because the overall depth of this year's coaching class
mm-hmm.
might, sounds like good names, but it might be weak. I really was high on Brian Daboll, but then you hear the negatives. Mm-hmm. And the negatives are that he's not a strong communicator, not strong in interviews, put it that way. He can coach, but so now, your head coach got to be a leader. And, it might be easy to lead the offensive side of the ball,
mm-hmm.
but you got to lead a whole team.
Right.
And does he have what it takes to lead a whole team? And then with Flores, he had some success at Miami, but,
yep.
Do your research, and there's a lot of issues.
Yeah.
And so that could make it. Now, he may, because there's still 7 jobs open,
mm-hmm.
he may end up getting a job, but to me, it's more because of default.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I agree with you. Toreen is saying that Pep Hamilton is scheduled to interview with the Bears tomorrow. Is that what you've heard, that it's tomorrow that they'll talk?
He told me that. David Kaplan said it's today.
Okay.
So I sent Cap a text. I said, Cap, I talked to him at 8:36 this morning because I checked my phone to see what time the call was. And I said, we talked for quite a while, and then he was going to go look at tape. Kev says, well, he's dropped off at Hallis Hall this morning. And I said, well, then he was talking to me in the car, and I know he wasn't talking to me in a car. So
interesting.
I don't know. He may have been there and then going to watch tape, but he wanted to watch a bunch of tape because he wanted to get a good feel for, what the Bears have. So he knows. I told him what I thought about that hitch on the top of Justin Fields.
Yes.
Throwing motion, and he said, watch carefully. And then I sent him a text after, and I said, just an FYI, I said, you don't see it when he's throwing on the run.
Mm.
It's when he's playing in the pocket.
Right.
I said, and so he said, thanks. He goes, I'm going to watch closely. Mm-hmm. So, it's to me, he's the guy. Mm-hmm. I was always hoping that in the back of my mind. But when I talked to him, I wasn't going to say a word about it because he said it was tomorrow. And the last thing I wanted to do was somebody, is put it out. Let's say I said something to Big Z or something like that. And then he knows my ties with Big Z. In fact, Big Z, that thing you got on at the intro, that's from Big Z coming to DC to interview me and Pep.
That's right. That image, right.
And so, I don't want Pep to lose any confidence in me.
Mm-hmm.
So I wasn't going to say anything. And then Aaron Wilson down in Houston had it. And he obviously got it from somebody in Houston. Mm-hmm. And then David got it from somebody. So then I said, okay, now I'll talk. But I just didn't want to. I would have gone the whole show without saying anything.
Right. Well, and that's one of the reasons you got the respect of all the people here. They understand that sometimes you just don't share things because it's not good for business, as we say, for building relationships. Matthew Fochese asked about Mike Kafka, the longtime coach. He coached at Northwestern, went on to the Chiefs as the quality control coach, has been with the Chiefs now as the quarterbacks coach and passing game coordinator. He had a long-time career. He jumped around from the Eagles, Patriots, Jaguars, Bucks, Vikings, Titans, and Bengals as a player, so never really was a prolific quarterback, but got a lot of good reviews as a quarterback's coach and kind of a passing genius, for lack of a better word of putting it. What do you think about Mike Kafka possibly being given an opportunity to call plays for the Chicago Bears?
Yeah, well, number one, I know Kafka as a player because I scouted him. Mm-hmm. And he's a career backup type guy.
Right.
They got the most out of his ability. A lot of times guys like that turn into great coaches.
Mm-hmm. So
Pep was a quarterback, but he never got the opportunity to play in the league. Here's the only negative I have. He's never called plays. He's going to bring in the offense wouldn't change. Terminology would be the same. Playbook's going to be relatively the same as it was. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's Andy Reid's offense. But the master wouldn't be calling the plays. And the guy who makes that offense go isn't the enemy, isn't Kafka, it's Andy Reid.
Mm-hmm.
And so, that and if they brought him in for an interview and another guy, you can't interview him until he's done, especially if they win this week. And I think they're going to the Super Bowl because I think they're going to beat Cincinnati. So you're going to wait 2 weeks,
mm-hmm.
2 more weeks,
mm-hmm.
minimum of 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Hell, I think the staff's going to be completed in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
2 weeks to key positions.
Right. And two of the games that I look forward to most every year are the Shrine Bowl game and the Senior Bowl game. And I know as a coaching staff, you'd love to have most of your staff available by then, so that you could review tape together and make some start giving your coaching staff, your scouting department input on what you saw from those All-Star games. Am I right on that?
Well, Generally speaking, you always sent the coaches down to the Senior Bowl, not necessarily to the other All-Star games because of the dates of them. Some of these guys, some head coaches give these guys a couple weeks off after the season, and they deserve it. So in this case, the coaches are going to get involved probably post combine or right around the combine. And where if they did it anyway, like the way we did it, they're going to, get their short list of guys to do. And then those at their position, then they're going to go from there. And then, their input is matched the same as the scouts' input. But like I said before, if this Ian Cunningham comes on board, you're going to have Kansas City, Philadelphia, and Chicago Bear reports. And that will be invaluable to the Bears. It's, the scouts itself, I think they're all safe until the draft. It's, Champ, Kelly, Lucas, depending on who comes in, some of those guys could be out the door in short order. That's going to be Ryan Pohl's decision. I was kind of surprised Howie Roseman would let one of his chief lieutenants go before the draft. But if it's it's an obvious promotion. So he's already director of player personnel, so it had to be a better title than that. So if he comes in, who from this group is going to go out?
Exactly.
If any, and maybe nobody, but this is, they might keep him around till the draft, but it's just something to watch over the next couple of weeks or even the next couple of days.
Yeah. Got to feel for those people in the Chicago Bears scouting department because, you got to do your job. You got to go 100 miles an hour now to prepare for this draft. But in the back of your mind, you're also wondering, am I going to have a job in May? And so that's going to be a tough situation for all of us who have wondered about their job status. That's going to be a tough situation. I can empathize with them.
Well, it depends on what their contractual situation is too.
Okay.
They can have time left on their contract and they could be let go. But, if they're contracts from the scouting business usually go like May 1st to May 1st because the draft's a little later. They might have switched to June 1st. It was always May 1st when I was working. And our guys always had 2 to 3 year contracts. So the guy's got a year left on his contract. He's going to get paid. Okay. So it's not like he's got to go out and get a job tomorrow. But with the openings, you only had 4 GM openings in the league. The Raiders, Minnesota, New York, and Chicago. So reality is how many scouting jobs are really going to be open? So if a guy does get let go, how is that going to affect them as far as getting another job?
Yep. Mule has a question, and I'd like to add to that. He says, Greg, do you favor anyone for our new offensive line coach? And clearly, that's a lot of speculation, but I'll add more to the speculation. Would you be surprised if, let's say, Pep Hamilton was hired as the offensive coordinator and that he reached out to Harry Hiestand for a third term?
Signed a new contract with Notre Dame.
Oh, so he's already locked and sealed and delivered to Notre Dame.
In fact, they officially announced. I mean, the deal was done weeks ago.
Okay.
They do their background check at Notre Dame before the school will officially allow the hire takes forever. But Harry was officially announced on Monday that as the Notre Dame new coach.
Good for him.
I don't know if Harry would come back for a third go.
Yeah.
But yeah, Pep and Harry got a very good relationship.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to say it's impossible,
Right.
But Harry's credibility would take a hit.
Really?
If he had just signed a contract on Monday.
Yes.
And then, well, I'm going back to the Bears.
Yeah, that's not good. That's not good.
Right. And Harry's very good. There's good guys out there. And Pep's been around him. Eberflus has been around him. Let's see how it plays out. But it is an extremely important hire. And there's two. You always have a head guy and an assistant. And I'll tell you one name that I don't know how many coaches Eberflus is going to be able to steal off the Colts staff.
Yeah, right.
A couple went to Philadelphia when Sirianni went there as the head coach.
Mm-hmm.
And they say that Borgonzi, the linebacker coach, I've read that from a couple people that they feel Borgonzi is going to be coming here.
That would be great.
So, well, there's a tie. We might have mentioned it the other day. I think it's Borgonzi's brother is the assistant GM for the Chiefs.
That's correct. Yes.
So there was a tie there with Eberflus and Ryan Poles.
Mm-hmm.
Because of that. But the assistant offensive line coach with the Colts
mm-hmm.
is Kevin Mawai, former.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. The Lions for a long time.
Exactly.
Is he ready to be the lead guy? I don't have the answer to that.
Right.
But he's obviously, and so I'm throwing a dart at the wall.
Mm-hmm.
But did you watch any of Hard Knocks?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Well, Mawai got his fair share of TV time.
Yes, he did.
But he was a pretty good damn player in his own right.
Mm-hmm. He was.
But that doesn't necessarily translate to being a good coach. But he's been the assistant for a while, and he could be ready to be the lead guy.
Mm-hmm. Kevin Mawai, a name to pay attention to, everybody.
I'm throwing a dart at the wall
sure.
here.
And Mike Monchak's name is coming up a lot in the chat room. What are your thoughts on the veteran offensive line coach, previously an offensive lineman who was great?
He's a Hall of Famer.
Yeah.
Got a very good reputation. Who was he with this past year?
Monchak was it Titans? Let me do a quick.
If he's with the Titans, he can go anywhere.
That's probably correct. Monchak, there he is.
There could be some of these guys. Some of these guys could come out of college.
Mm-hmm.
When we got Harry came from college.
Broncos.
Well, then he'd be free.
Yep. Because Nathaniel Hackett might want to bring in his own people. So Monchak is.
I read something already that they might their line coach and run game coordinator at Green Bay might be going with Hackett. But a lot of times these people, they try to tie names together and speculate. Like, yesterday Rappaport gave out the name of that Eagles passing game coordinator.
Mike Groh?
No, Mike Groh's the Colts wide receiver coach.
Oh,
the Eagles, and Groh was here once before.
That's right.
I know Mike Groh since he was a freaking ball boy with the Giants. This guy, I forgot the name. He's currently the passing game coordinator for the Eagles. He was the wide receiver coach for the Colts. And so right away, I made a call. I go,
oh, I know who you're talking about.
Good coach. And Palillo or something like that.
Yes, Kevin Patullo.
And he said, I don't think the response I got was, I don't think Matt would hire him.
Mm-hmm.
So, but it was, I think, Rappaport trying to put one and one together and get two.
Sure.
And that might be the same case with, the Green Bay offensive line coach going to Denver.
Mm-hmm. So, do you think that this staff could be assembled, at least in major pieces to the staff, before that Shrine Bowl game, which is next Thursday?
Well, they're already starting practice.
Yeah, that's right. They start practice.
No, even if they are, I don't think their presence would even be at the Senior Bowl.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, I mean, their number one job right now is to find out about the players that are currently here.
Yeah.
You got to make a plan for those guys. And let's say Ryan Pace and his staff were still here.
Uh-huh.
Well, then it's not as important, because at least you got people in the building that know and understand the players.
Mm-hmm.
Now you're going to have a new coaching staff and you got a new general manager. Their number one job is to find out what's here.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And then, you work free agency and you work the draft in conjunction, that they don't have all their picks. They have needs, we mentioned a little while ago. Mm-hmm. And it's going to go, okay, where can I get all these things taken care of?
Mm-hmm.
What can I get in free agency and it's not going to break the bank? And then what do I feel pretty good about in the draft?
Right. And look at this list of free agents for the Bears. There's over 30 players, including the big names: Allen Robinson, Akeem Hicks, Jimmy Graham. All three of those guys are likely not to come back, along with Andy Dalton. Probably will not be coming back. But then you've got guys that you might want to rely on for another year or two, guys like Artie Burns and Alec Ogletree and Elijah Wilkinson, and on and on and on. So lots of decisions have to be made. Sam Mustipher is not an unrestricted free agent, so he I forgot what that designation is, like a limited free agent. Yeah. So he might be back. Bilal Nichols is another big name that you have to consider trying to bring back.
He's going to be your three technique. You got to bring him back.
Yeah, you have to. So a lot of decisions, and you're absolutely right. Those guys are watching tape, and it's as painful as that tape is going to be from the 2021 season.
Well, you know what? When you're watching, you're not watching the game.
Yeah, you're right.
Yes. You're watching the player.
Right, and some of that is going to be painful too. So you know that.
You're looking. Does he have, especially on the defensive side of the ball, does he have the athleticism I'm looking for at the position? Remember a while ago you talked about, when Lovey was here, the coaches gave us a profile for every position on the offense and the defense,
mm-hmm.
Of what the ideal player was.
Oh, cool.
Okay, so we had it written up. We had a in the scouting notebook, there was, okay, this is what we're looking for in a weak side defensive end. This is what we're looking for in a strong side defensive end.
Mm-hmm.
The size, the speed, the arm length, height, weight, everything. So, and the skill set.
Mm-hmm.
So these guys, I mean, that's standard operating procedure. So you got to find out who's a fit. And the coaches, when they go through the tape, and it'll be the coaches more than the pro scouting staff, because the coaches are going to know exactly what they want. Right. And they're going to go through and they're going to say, okay, I want this guy. I don't think this guy can fit. Now, year one, you're going to have to live with some guys.
Right.
That might not necessarily be perfect fits.
Mm-hmm. And so that's another huge thing for the scouting department. Perhaps you can give us a clue as to how that might be working. Is they're now, I'm sure Mark Sadowski and the other people in that scouting department are having conversations with the new head coach to learn a little bit about what he's looking for and so forth. And so that almost means that the offensive coordinator and defensive coordinators would be great to bring them on as quickly as possible so that the scouting department now makes changes in what they have done in terms of maybe prioritizing players for this upcoming draft.
Well, you can't manufacture a player.
Okay.
The player is what he is. But and looking at the scheme that's been run here, it was, even though it was a 3-4 base, first of all, most of the time they were playing a 4-2-5, in nickel. But their base 3-4 was not a 2-gap 3-4. It was more of a 1-gap, which is similar to what Eberflus's offense or defense is. So there's a little similarity there, but you still got to have that explosiveness that you're looking for. So, okay, what are you looking for? Well, turn on the Colts tape and look at their defensive line. Now, they must not have been real happy with their defensive line because they fired the defensive line coach earlier this week. So, and that guy had a pretty good, I think his name was Brian Baker, and he had a pretty good reputation, but they didn't get the production from that group that they anticipated getting. And maybe he hadn't gotten the development that they were anticipating getting from some of the young guys. So they're going to make a change. I've seen Brian Baker coach. I've seen him in all-star games coach and stuff, and he's always been very, very impressive. But, you're not with him on a daily basis in practice and watch how he teaches there.
I love this question from Ron. He says, which players you think might benefit the most from the coaching changes? A little hard to answer that, of course, because the entire coaching staff hasn't been changed. But off the top of your head, do you think somebody like an Eddie Jackson could benefit from the culture building aspects and the attention to detail and playing to the end of the whistle? Guys like that could benefit from the arrival of Eberflus?
Well, put it this way. Eberflus, if you've seen it, and he got this from Marinelli, is loaf. They get graded in practice.
Yes.
Every single play. So it's time consuming. So it's every play in practice, it's every play in a game. And play time the following week is determined by how many loaf plays you had the week before. So that's part of the way of making the players accountable. And, it having been around Marinelli a lot, and I just love watching him in practice.
And he was loved by the players. Well,
yeah, well, he wasn't a shithead.
Yeah.
He wasn't mean. But he demanded. In fact, I was listening. There was something yesterday, and they said, it might have been Kaplan who said it, but he said, you're sitting here watching games with Alex Brown and Briggs. How excited they get when they see defensive players hustle, and see them create a turnover. And that all came from Marinelli and Lovey, because and we practiced that every freaking day. Why we had a lot of turnovers? We practiced turnovers in practice. There wasn't a pass play in 7-on-7 or in teamwork that Peanut wasn't trying to strip the ball. Every single play. The play could be 8 seconds over. He's still going after the guy trying to strip it. And so that helps the offensive players too, as far as ball security, because they knew those guys were coming after it every single play in practice.
Yeah, I saw the video of our Bears' new head coach talking about loafing when he was still with the Colts, of course, and said, that they will decrease the amount of snaps for that player if they detect that they have a high loaf rate. You know, if we had you graded at 10 loafs, 10 plays where you loafed, well, you probably see 10 fewer snaps. And that's one of the reasons why they carried a lot of defensive linemen in their 4-3 scheme. They would carry like 8 defensive linemen.
And that's not unusual. You get too deep at every position. I think, defensive end here, they got some strong depth here.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Right out, they're not going to have to make any changes there. Mm-hmm. And you've got a rotation.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I agree with Herney here. The practice and film should be a big improvement. Tony the Pod Boss has a good one. He wants you to take a look at Troy Anderson from Montana State. Tony loves what he's seen of him in film. He describes him as a faster Urlacher, 6'4", 235 pounds, that has played running back and linebacker. Somebody maybe you can take a look at in the near future, Greg, and share your opinion.
Right down the list here, but yeah. I don't know if he's faster than Urlacher. Urlacher was a 4-5 guy.
Well, that's going to be a good.
Urlacher was a safety in college.
That's right. At New Mexico State, I believe it was where he went to.
New Mexico. Well, New Mexico State's down in Las Cruces, right next to El Paso.
New Mexico. You're right. Okay. So
I gotta write down his name here.
Troy Anderson from Montana State, and we'll be talking about that and other potential draft prospects in the weeks ahead. Greg, I'd love to talk to you again after the Bears have the press conference where they introduce both Poles and Eberflus to the media. We can react to some of the things they say. So how about we get together again next week, depending on what day the press conference is?
Well, yeah, let's keep it open-ended. Or do you think it's better until they get a couple hires? Because you know as well as I do.
Yeah.
Press conference is going to be telling you what you want to hear.
Exactly. I hope so. I hope they again, transparency. I use that word cautiously. I know there's a lot that they can't tell us. I absolutely know. But what I want to hear is a little bit about, like Lovie Smith was great. Our number one priority is beat Green Bay. That fired up fans and so forth. And so tell us what your vision is, and be straight with us. If it can't happen overnight, then let us know. We'll be more patient as fans. Give us a year or two, and we're going to have a Super Bowl contending team. Just things that make us believe in them. And I think that's an important part of operating a football team is how you handle the public.
I don't disagree, but you know what? That has nothing to do with the coach and the GM and everything to do with the PR department.
I'm with you. I've worked.
What they feel is the best way to go,
mm-hmm.
and so you have constraints put on you,
mm-hmm.
so to speak. What you're going to say and what you're not going to say.
Mm-hmm. Yep. All right, everybody. I want to let people know that you should be following Greg Gabriel on Twitter. It's at Greg Gabe. So let me spell it out for those in the audio podcast world. That's at GREGGABE. And hopefully you're following me at Barroom Network. Greg and I will be back in the near future after the coaching staff has been set up and we can delve into those players. And then maybe also sometime after these All-Star games, I know you're going to be looking at them. You did some work over for the Shrine Bowl game, so I know that one's going to be particularly interesting to you. Maybe we can talk about that in the near future when we get together.
Sounds good. Stay on because I got to talk to you a little bit here.
You got it. All right, everybody. We'll be back. I think the Barfly Tailgaters are back Sunday morning. They're going to be screaming and hollering about everything that's happening at Alice Hall. So join them, I think, at 9 a.m. Central this Sunday. So, and enjoy the games this week. Bye-bye, everybody.
See ya.